Perfect. So it's my pleasure to introduce Quentella Enty, who is Vice President of Business Development at KFA. Welcome, Quentella, and thank you for participating. Tell us, what is your role at KFA, and really what is the business focus of KFA?
First of all, I want to thank you so much, Sylvie, for inviting me here today, and welcome back. We missed you last year, and I hear that we're packed at capacity today, and I think that's because we're happy you're here.
Thanks.
At KFA, I am the Vice President, and my work, well, basically what we do is IT full service management for architects, engineers, construction managers, and capital programs throughout the United States. We work with partners like government and federal, state, and small municipalities. And today, because of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I've been throughout the United States just educating other businesses like ours about this huge opportunity for so many of us. There's something in the infrastructure bill for all of us. Usually we think of the trades, but for professional services, there's something for everybody. So I'm hoping today that I can share some tidbits on how to get people prepared and excited to participate in this over $1 trillion opportunity for all of us in the U.S.
So your company develops a software that really helps cities and state to manage really large infrastructure projects and like constructions of bridge, roads, buildings, right?
Yes, for almost 30 years, we've won 22 awards to date, and we implement various solutions, project management information systems for government projects. So those owners pick the solution that they want, and then we come in and implement those systems to make sure that there's governance. Governance helps with keeping projects safe. It helps budgets to be on time. It helps for you to analyze a project to see if it was done right or what was those hiccups so that the next project could be better. But it also does something really special with keeping you on budget. And then no change orders, meaning that whatever the owners plan that they want to build, they get to decide if they're going to push something through or not. It stops litigation for a lot of our projects, but it keeps our projects honest, that the public can also know where a project is, how's it doing with our taxpayer dollars. And then lastly, once the asset is built, we get to push that data into facilities management services, and they can manage that asset for the life of the asset. So if there's a bridge, a road, a rail, a university, that the facilities manager could know how to take care of it.
So your clients are primarily, as we said, municipalities, state, federal entities, and you've become a real expert on government procurement processes, right? Because I'll just quote a few statistics. Like in the fiscal year of 2019, the U.S. federal government spent about $597 billion on contracts. And the market for state, local education contracts is thought to be worth like $1.5 trillion. And there's one thing that people might not know is that the federal government must award 5% of its contracts to businesses with a 8A certification, which is companies that are certified by the U.S. Small Business Administration as women or minority-owned small business owners who are socially and economically disadvantaged. And there's also like several cities and counties and state that have similar goal of helping and use the services of minority-owned businesses. Share with us, what are the types of certifications that cities, counties, states also look for sometimes?
Well, what's really great about what you're saying, Sylvie, it's something for everyone. When you think of the SBA, who the federal government is the biggest buyer in the world, we buy everything. And what's great about the SBA they pay net 15 days. So that's really great that you get paid on time. But what I would like to say about some of their programs is a free registration. Even if you're not SBA 8A, for anyone to register if you have a small business into their portal as a woman-owned small business, a hub zone, a veteran-owned business, and just to name a few. But as you said, for the small municipalities along with the state, there's also women-owned business certification. We call them WBEs, nicknamed Weebies, and they're actually the largest gain. They get the largest gain of the contracts, women-owned businesses, believe it or not. And then we have veteran-owned business, people with disabilities, minority business enterprise, and even white males. When people say inclusion, diversity, inclusion, that means white males who have small businesses too. And so there's something for everyone at the federal, along with also the municipality level. And a lot of these certifications are free. And for a lot of our states, city, and municipalities, it is mandated that we are inclusive because everyone pays taxes. So you want everyone who wants to start a business in our country, in our towns and cities, to get that fair opportunity.
So, right. And that kind of, so you mentioned, just to recap what you said, so there's the WBE, which stands for Women Business Enterprise Certification. And this is a certification, there's a third party that certifies those women-owned businesses on behalf of U.S. corporations, right? The Women's Business Enterprise National Council. Yeah. And then as you mentioned, there's also Minority Business Enterprise Certification, which is given out by the National Minority Supplier Development Council, which is also a third party. And there's others, as you mentioned, veterans. There's a lot of different qualifications, and it's worth kind of investigating. I guess the Small Business Administration Office, yes. That's where they kind of really describe it, and you could get to those. So you touch on this a little bit, but why do government, and especially perhaps local governments, why do they have this program, and what has been the benefits that you've seen?
Well, I just want to add on to what you were saying. What I was talking about in general were some of the free ones, but you did bring up a good point about the national ones, like the National Minority Supplier Development Council for the Minority Business Enterprise. And that's national, and they have affiliates throughout the United States and regions, and there is a cost to them. And it's a vetting process so that they can make sure when you go and do business with a corporation or a local government, that you're really who you say you are, but you also really do that service. So it's kind of a vetting process to protect partners. So whether there's fellow MBEs or local entrepreneurs or corporations who want to give, a small business a shot, that's the vetting process. The same with WeBank, Women Business Enterprise Council throughout the United States. They have the same thing, but that does also have a fee, and they're doing the same exact work. They're all doing great work because without these organizations, sometimes they're overlooked, and small businesses and communities are overlooked. And we just want to make sure when you talk about the mom and pop shop who may have wonderful products and services, this is a way for them to scale. They partner with corporations, they become a big name brand, they franchise, or they just have different locations throughout the United States. It helps them scale, but it also helps them to create jobs in their community. And we know that when you have great, strong businesses in your community, it helps lift up the community. So it's very intentional. And they're around because beforehand, unfortunately, when you're so small, it's hard for larger organizations, one, to trust you or to see you. And so this is why we have these opportunities.
Right. So it brings some visibility and also some relations and network that sometimes when you start a small business and perhaps you are a minority owned, you're not part of a bigger ecosystem, and this allows you to be part of it. It was interesting what you said. It gives you some visibility. So these benefit to companies, however, I guess it's still not fully utilized. So I've read that, for example, of the $71.5 billion that's reserved for these 8A small business, the women and minority-owned small businesses from disadvantaged group. In 2018, only $29 billion of those work opportunities were claimed. So that meant that nearly 1 in 3 federally available 8A contracts was not used, went to waste. And that's been a real challenge, right? So there's a need to also get businesses to take the time, which is a huge time commitment, I guess, and to understand the government procurement process, but every level of government. And as you touched on, there's also the issue of the payments, right, where government have a much slower cycle of payment, which makes it also challenging for a small business to deliver the goods and service and then having to wait over 120 days to be paid back, having to wait for a really long time to be paid back. And sometimes they just don't have the financial backing to do that, which is why they don't go for these government contracts, right?
Yeah, and you're right. With the SBA, you get net 15, but you're right. When you deal with state municipalities, you could wait 30 to 90 to 160, almost sometime a year. It could be a long time. And so, and also the paperwork, the reporting that goes into, reporting these, funds and what you've done. Sometimes it is very time consuming. But what we do have throughout the United States, in every state, there's free small business development centers. There's, like you said, the local Women Business Development Center. There's also the SBA, along with the Minority Supplier Development Council. And a lot of them offer free services and free counselors to help you with understanding these contracts. More particularly, there's a procurement technical assistance center, and that basically, we call it PTAC, but there's a person there that runs the reports. They put your NAICS code, which is your North American Trade Commodities Code. So if you're trying to do business in Canada and Mexico, throughout the United States, there's these codes that explain your services and also your product that you have. And so if they put that through this system, it can show just opportunities in government for you. So the PTAC centers are free. And so you can go there and they can help you navigate the process. And so there are people just like myself and throughout the small business community that really try to educate small businesses through webinars and outreach events, because we do need a marketing boost. Like you said, those funds are left on the table every year because one, it can be overwhelming just to think of, I'm trying to work on my business during the day, but I also need to work in the business and on the business. How do I manage both? These free counselors and partners in our community are here to help give you a lift and a support.
And you touched on the MBDC, which is the Minority Business Development Council. So they have agencies right throughout the country, but it's run by the Department of Commerce and it helps minority-owned businesses to grow in the U.S., but also abroad, right? To export their goods and services to other countries. And I think each center, each agency in different areas of the country are focused on a particular part of the world. So like Chicago is focused on exports to Africa, and San Diego is to Asia, right? And that network, those agencies could be a great place. You were talking about visibility for any corporations or any cities who want to hire more minority-owned businesses, because that's really a chamber of commerce of that group's. Can you share just a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, and Sylvie, this is really special because I remember the year that you had us come out to Concordia, and we got to talk to people at the time. It was OPIC, and now that's DFC, and I just want to tell you that what's special about Minority Business Development Agency, like you said, throughout the United States, they offer these grants. It's called the ISTEP grant. And it's 75 up to 75% refund for your flights and your room and board, and you become a part of like an export mission, delegates to go overseas. So as you said, you're right, throughout the United States, there's these centers. And if you want to focus on selling your goods and services throughout the world, you can go as a part of this delegation through this organization. Also, with SBA, the woman-owned small business, they're also doing some exporting as well. And the United Nations has a group as well for exporting. So there are within our U.S. Department of Commerce just great grants. And I think a lot of businesses don't know. We went overseas. We started in 2019 going beyond, because we did work in Canada, but to Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Dubai. We went on trade missions with a group of other businesses, our local state Minority Supplier Development Counter Export Center, and our state U.S. Department of Trade and Department of Commerce Center. I recommend going when you go your first time with our government because they already have the relationships. They vet out other chambers in those countries. It's safer, you're going with a group and our country know that you're there. When we went back the second year, the pandemic happened. We were in Kenya doing business networking, meeting with our embassy, being briefed on business opportunity, and we were told we needed to get home. And it was a great testing of our business to see if we were really ready for global business. And we got home. But I want to give thanks to the MBDA Export Center and our state government and our president at the time. He made sure Americans get home safely. Yeah. And so I think I highly recommend that you take advantage that people are watching who are interested. You get to go with yourself and a +1 and to get up to 75% of a grant. Why not? As a taxpayer, you pay for this. And I think if you have there's so much opportunity overseas, and sometimes we're fighting for contracts locally and throughout the U.S. Our federal government passed the BUILD Act a few years ago, and it was bipartisan, $60 billion to rebuild infrastructure projects in Central America, Africa, along with the Caribbean. And we've seen these storms hit Haiti, Puerto Rico, and we hear all this infrastructure work that needs to be built. Why not U.S. businesses go over, with the support of our government? There's so much opportunity. And believe it or not, despite what you hear on the news, we're welcome in many places as U.S. citizens.
And I think growing, right? And then I think what you're highlighting here is that if as a small business, you start looking at other markets, your business grows, and that benefits your community because you're hiring more people and you can contribute more to the fabric of the community where you're operating. So to wrap things up, tell us what's the good starting point about certifying your business and participating? What's a good starting point? And maybe what are like the 3 items that might give you tractions that a business owner should have on their to-do list, perhaps for 2023?
Well, I think a good start is visiting your local city. They would have a small business administration. They'll also have a PTAC, a procurement technical assistance center, a small business development agency, the local women business development agency, and also the minority business development agency and the National Minority Supplier Development Agency. One thing I forgot, Sylvie, and I'm sorry, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification. Because of this infrastructure bill, a lot of the money right now that's being released is the Department of Transportation. And so there's a free certification, DBE, for disadvantaged business enterprises for you to register with your local transit. And it's reciprocal normally. If you get one with your transit, your bus or your train or your, whichever that is, your roads or your local city, you don't have to do it for all the other transits. But you start there with your local government. Also, the state website has great information if you want to certify to get these certifications. And then those national organizations that we talked about as well. That's where you start.
That's where you start. So you start with the SBA to kind of give you
Yes.
those small business certification. Then you look at your state, and then there might be a specialized one, like with you mentioned, if that's applicable, the Department of Transportation. So that would be a really good start. Okay, so what's your last, in closing, what is your advice on business development? What keeps you going and gives you air in your wings and energy to continue to develop business? And when you're hitting a bit of a rough patch or things are not working the way you want, what is your advice? What keeps you going?
Actually, I surround myself around people like you, entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are my hero. It takes courage, a lot of courage, to run a business and to be responsible for customers, partners, and employees. And so I'm so inspired just naturally by them. I love hearing their stories, and I love sharing resources. I just, and learning from them. And so I think for all of us, because the past few years, our businesses took a huge hit during the pandemic and the social unrest. And I'm just saying is hug our businesses, because some of them did not make it. Support our local businesses and encourage those business owners, by going to shop with them. And so our country, we hear this often, that the small business is the engine, of vitalization for economic and development throughout our communities and throughout this country. Our local businesses hire a lot of people. And so support our business community. And I think that's the one place where I see everyone get along. People love creating jobs, and people love creating business. And so I see a happy medium when I'm in those spaces.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to